Hello, YouTube. It's Dispatcher Mike. Dispatcher Greg's off to go get his iPad. We're still 3 minutes away from the published departure time, and we're still looking for an on-time departure for the Flying Life podcast. Flight number 34, headed to your podcast app near you or live on YouTube. One of the two. I need to get myself the chat room open so I can be completely distracted throughout this whole process. And I am talking to myself, by the way, utterly and completely. I pause myself there. And I need to pop out the chat. Pop out chat. All right. You need to go. Maybe close because you're in front of me. And then I need my soundboard, Soundbite, to come over to here. What's going on, James? Are you still here? Hello, if you are. 2 minutes away from on-time departure. Hello, Mark. Welcome. Welcome, sir.
What's going on? This is either a chapel or a mausoleum or something that's at Eden Cemetery, which is in Schiller Park.
Greg's got the TV on in the background.
I'm hoping to get a call for overtime tonight. So
me too.
I've got my phone on. I'm like, okay, see if they're gonna call me.
I'm an extra tomorrow. Like literally, I'm going to work to sit there and do nothing for 12 hours.
Oh, that's perfect.
Well, it's great. It'll be
easy money.
A great time to edit the podcast.
Yeah, that's perfect money. Run with it, man.
All right, you got the chat up?
I think so. Let me see here. Hang on. Son of a biscuit. Family show.
You said biscuit. I'm from the South. We're known for our biscuits.
That's right. All right, let me get the YouTube link up here. YouTube, where are we? How do I work this darn thing? Here we go.
Hello, Liz Piper.
Thanks, fam. Okay, turn the sound off on this thing.
I left myself without all of the news items. That was very, very genius of me.
You did what?
I didn't have any of the. I closed the window with all of the news links.
Okay, where's all the chat stuff? Where's the chat? Where's the chat?
The chat usually pops out on the side when you click on the live YouTube link.
Yeah. I'm using my iPad and I don't see it on here, but that's probably my issue.
I think when you look into the YouTube app or the that, it's you have to scroll down and there's like a little button that says live chat.
Okay. You should tell I'm not technologically advanced here. All right, I'll just do it through here. Do that. Hang out down here and then pop out the chat. Chat pop out.
My computer's working overtime. The cooling fan turned on.
Talk for a second. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, frog.
Okay, and you can hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Right.
Try
All right.
typing something.
Typing something.
You say hi to the chat room or something like that.
Hello.
Oh, good. Can't hear keystrokes. Pretty good. All right. We'll go
All right,
down.
I think I am marginally ready to go. Let me pull up the show notes. Did you see my additions? Were they okay?
I did. Yeah, you're going to talk about them.
I didn't watch the whole 60 minutes thing, but I saw enough of it to kind of get an idea of it. But
what do you call your company? Acme North, Acme Blue, Acme Global. Which one is it again?
Acme Globe, I think. I don't know. I don't know. Did I give it away by saying that?
Give it away by saying Acme United? Oh!
Oh, God. Where is my...
Acme Intercontinental?
That's fine. Whatever you want to call it. Shared with me and Flying in Life episode 34. Okay. I'm ready. I got that up. You can hear me. Everything sounds good.
Liz and Mark, I hope you guys got that one. All right, I'm open on the show notes. We might cut that last episode, that last story.
What's
Just you can now use a non-complex airplane for the CFI and commercial pilot tests.
Is that the American Airlines one? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I already cut.
Oh, I see. I gotcha. Okay.
No, American Airlines one's still there. No, it's the one all the way at the bottom. All right. I'm going to come back over to this screen. That was 17 minutes of stuff. All right, here we go. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear this?
No.
Really?
Dad, I heard a phone ring.
Well, I'm glad the phone's ringing. Thankfully, I have a wife to do that one. So you didn't hear that. Why does... Oh, do you know why? Loopback's open. Loopback audio. Well, we're not playing any... Well, that means YouTube folks aren't going to get any sound. No matter how long this takes, we'll still be out on before the Airline Pilot Guy shows on time.
There you go.
Performance. Because I need to make that.
And that's all that's important.
Yeah. As long as we beat the pilots out of the gate, it's no big deal. All right, let's try this again. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That I can hear.
All right, let's give us 10 seconds of silence. You drinking beer?
Negative. Just in case I do go in tonight.
Makes sense. Flying Life Podcast, episode 34, recorded April 25th, 2018. Welcome to the Flying Life Podcast, a podcast just about that, flying, aviation, and my life. I'm Dispatcher Mike, a dispatcher for a major airline based in the United States. Joining me again on this episode, because he couldn't make it with me to Sun and Fun down in Florida, Dispatcher Greg from Acme Global, we'll call it today.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending where you're listening to. Yes, I was not able to make it to Sun and Fun. I am so sad about that, actually. But I was in Florida, just not in Sun and Fun.
That's fine. You were there a week late and had more important family opportunities to be there. So it's all good. Will you be joining me in Oshkosh?
That's questionable. I hope to. But my work schedule may be shifting, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and see
we'll talk about that in a bit. In this episode, we're going to talk about ATC privatization, back in it again, thanks to Congressman Bill Shuster from Pennsylvania. Oh, and wait, as I had that in the show notes from last night, never mind. It's off the table again. We'll talk about those. American Airlines launches a pilot program. 60 Minutes talks about Allegiant Air. United gets a new 737 MAX 9. And if we have time, we'll talk about a new thing with the CFI and commercial pilot exams. And main topic of this episode is going to be about jump seating. Why do idiots like us get allowed to sit in the jump seat? How cool is it? What do we get to do with it? And all things like that. But until then, let's go ahead and start with the news. All right, the first, if you follow me on Twitter and the Follow Up Podcast on Twitter, last night I was hitting the tweets pretty heavily about GA leaders urgently warning about ATC privatizations being imminent. That's because Congressman Bill Shuster from Pennsylvania literally snuck in at the last second an amendment to the bill to basically take all of the air traffic control part of the FAA and throw it aside into a new shell company, a new committee within the Department of Transportation that was, run by the airlines. And as you all know, I'm a GA pilot. I'm more about general aviation than all that. My employer was very much against ATC privatization to start with. So to me, this was that big issue. I didn't want it. I didn't like it, anything like that. And I right away got on MBAA had a site to email to Congress. So did the EAA and the AOPA. And I hit all three. I filled out their form letters and hit it. And this evening after the podcast, because they weren't voting today because the president of France was speaking to Congress, so they didn't have time to vote on it today, I was going to call all of them and make sure I left them voicemails and just really blow up their phones. But just as I was going through and had to putting the show notes together, this came out from the AOPA and the EAA. In the link to this article is in the show notes. This is from the AOPA. Shuster backs down on last minute ATC, basically because there was such a large opposition from general aviation pilots to every single person in Congress, both senators and House of Representatives, that he withdrew the manager's amendment that he put into the bill, which I have to say, I mean, you have to say it as it is and talk a little bit about it, politics about it. It's an election year. It's going to be a heated election year for many of the people in the red states where they usually would go through easily. I mean, they have some more stiff competition this year. We'll just say it that way. And I think the number of calls and things that they got, especially from the congressmen that are in districts that are aligned heavily with aviation and transportation, it's I'm glad he took it back because I think it's a dumb idea. In my personal opinion, air traffic control is not broken, and the old adage says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, Greg, you have any thoughts?
Agreed. Yeah, no, I went and clicked on the link, filled out the little email to my senator and all that. And no, I agree. If the system's not broken, don't try going in there and reinventing the wheel here. I mean, it's clearly political move here, and I'm with you on that.
And I mean, even after our last regular episode, besides Sun Fun, we talked about ground delay programs. Then, after learning how the FAA uses them, not of hindrances to an airline, but tools to make everyone have a fair shot at an airport during a constraint, they're doing it right. The only thing that's holding us back on next gen is a solid number of 4 years of solid funding that the FAA can implement and use to push the next gen stuff through. Because let's face it, next gen was the biggest thing when I was a freshman in college, and that was in 2001. Yeah. 17 years later, next gen is still coming. And it's not because the FAA is dragging their feet on it. It's because they don't get the money that they need to go ahead and fund all of their stuff.
Right. No, I agree. And I think part of this, it's a same issue, but a little bit separate. Part of the FAA reauthorization bill, and I'm just reading from a separate site here, section 744 of that bill. I don't know if you saw this or not, but they're trying to do in the language of it, they're trying to get a study on reducing crew complement to one captain and a remote first officer for all cargo operations. I don't know if you saw that or not.
There's a lot of stuff jammed in that bill as well. Another thing that's out in the bill as well is a requirement for some Part 135 mandatory age requirement of age 65 if you have over 100,000 scheduled operations a year. That only affects one carrier here in the United States that works on a Part 135 on demand. That's NetJets. It's the only carrier that it affects, and it's like, where'd you get that number from? I mean, really? Right. Like, did you just pull that out of a hat, or what's your proof on it? I mean, all of these carriers are still, especially NetJets, is basically operates as a 121 carrier, but they're just Part 135 because they're on demand air taxi.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an on demand unscheduled service, because anyone can call NetJets up and say, hey, I need to go from Noonan to Oshkosh in July. How much is it going to cost?
Right. It's so what I think, if anyone listening here wants to read more about it, do a search for this new provision in the authorization bill, and then put the link out to voice your opinion to your senators to not pass it, or not at least the air traffic control privatization, and maybe some of this single pilot type stuff.
Yeah. I mean, at least he withdrew his amendment. It only took, honestly, that's the power of the general aviation community and EAA and AOPA, and that's why I'll always be a member of both. Yeah. Is that we scuttled legislation in 24 hours because they put out a link and everyone knew how serious it was, and all of us acted within 24 hours to do something about it.
Yep.
So let's move on to the next article. The next article is it caught my eye. This is from today this is from Travel Weekly, but American Airlines is launching a pilot training program, and it's a program that will place pilots at its wholly owned regionals, that being Envoy, Piedmont, and PSA. And I don't see it as a complete ab initio training, but I see this as an almost guaranteed financing option. So this is pretty much one step down the trail to the ab initio training, where the airlines start footing the whole bill. But this is basically going through here. It is the lack of financing options has restricted the size of the pilot pool, leaving some of the most talented people out of the running. That is from a quote from Kimball Stone, one of American Airlines' vice presidents. Is basically a private lender, Discover Student Loans, is going to facilitate the whole program, which is called the American Airlines Cadet Academy. But this is a big deal in the industry. We've been talking about, you've heard it on other podcasts. We're talking about it a little bit. Just the pilot shortage. It's real. There aren't any pilots out there. There's no one wants to take the job. No one wants to spend $110,000 to get all your ratings to make $30,000 a year. Now, thankfully, those salaries at the regional carriers have come up a little bit, but still, it's not where it's going to be. And I've said it before on this podcast. I'll say it again. I think the regional airline is a dying breed, and it will be no longer cost effective for an airline to contract it out, and these regional carriers will stop making money.
Yeah,
and I just don't think they're going to exist anymore. I honestly think you're going to have an Alaska, you're going to have an American, you're going to have a United, you're going to have a Delta, you're going to have a Southwest, and that's it. And you might keep some of the wholly owned, and there might be some accounting laws for the big players to take a accounting write-off to pay less taxes off of it, which would then give bigger profits. But I don't see them as a profitable entity for much longer.
I agree. In fact, there's been some rumors going around at the company that I work for that they may be going the route that American is and starting some sort of training program because of the shortages and because of all that. So, yeah, this will be interesting. The next few years are going to be pivotal. Shortages and money, everything's about crunching the numbers and trying to see, what can we do to bring in experienced pilots and not, the regionals and all that, with them paying what they're paying. They're going to have to do something. And this is a good way, I think, to start bringing experienced pilots in and not having to worry too much about the shortages and so forth.
Yeah, and another thing, if people want to research this program, you don't need any flight time experience to get into it or approved for it. It's almost like they're back in the financing to your training, and you can start and go from zero to hero. Not sure what kind of training you're getting or anything like that, but it's going to become creative, and there are going to be some people companies are going to be very innovative, and there will be some good deals for people to start with. I know in my company, they're trying to start an internal process where you have to have at least a private pilot and 100 hours, and then the company will finance you the money to get your training if you go to their training, and if you go to their training, and you basically become a pawn to the company to move you to where you need to go until you get back to the company, and they preserve your original hire date in theory, which is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically go on a leave of absence for the company, you go get your ratings, and when you return to the company, you're a first officer on whatever piece of equipment you can hold.
Yeah, no, that's a good plan. I kind of like what you said, the 0 to hero plan, considering I have 0 flight hours. Actually, I take that back. I've got 3 logged flight hours in my logbook, and that was 8 years ago. So, eventually I'd like to get my pilot certificate, and maybe even, although I might be getting a little too old to get my, commercial license and all that kind of stuff. But, if my company came to us and said, hey, we'll train you from nothing up to something and possibly give you a chance of flying the jets, it's something I would think about.
I tell you, flying the jets is fun. It moves a lot faster than the Musketeer.
Right.
There's a lot more systems, but
right.
I mean, even still, with our knowledge and training, in at least the training that I had at my previous airline before we merged, it's not hard to plot me into a cold, dark cockpit of an airplane I haven't been in before, and I can get it up and running pretty darn quickly because you understand the systems. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about jump seating, our topic. We're trained on the systems of our aircraft. So, you want to talk about 60 Minutes in their Allegiant Air investigation? I know you've watched more of it than I did.
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, let's say maybe 3 weeks ago, 60 Minutes put out, it was a 2-part series about Allegiant Air, and basically what they did is they used the Freedom of Information Act and got all the data from Allegiant and among all the other carriers, American, Delta, United, and they compared the number of incidents that Allegiant has had versus all the other carriers. And they came up with some, in their language, astounding numbers of how many incidents that they have had compared to other carriers. And of course, in 60 Minutes style, they brought on people who have been involved in engine failures and smoke in the cabin and all that kind of stuff. And they brought them on the show and, had them describe their circumstances to make it more dramatic. Now, of course, when you look at Allegiant, I think they, just looking at data, they have had more incidents than all the other carriers. But nothing that the incidents that are out there, I don't think are incidents that other airlines have experienced, if that makes sense. They just have had maybe more of those type of incidents. The number of engine failures and emergency landings and that kind of thing. So they had an FAA investigator on board or on the show, and the guy who, I forget, what is it, Lester Holt, or I don't know, I probably got his name completely wrong. But anyway, he interviewed the FAA and gave him the data and said, are you at all concerned about any of this information? And the FAA was basically like, no, we're not concerned. We deal with each incident as it happens and, that kind of thing. And, it's interesting to hear the information, but I don't know that it's as bad as CBS is making it to be. I don't know. It's always one-sided information that you're getting. Of course, they're trying to make it a news story. They're trying to make it more dramatic than it is. And then you got the FAA who's, trying to make it look like everything is nice and rosy. So I don't know. If you have not watched it, I put the link out in the show notes, and maybe you can form your own opinion on what you think, what your opinions are on it. But the FAA came back and wrote a 15-page. Now, if anybody knows anything about the FAA, they're very slow to do anything. I mean, you try to get something from them, it'll take 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe to get a response. Well, within 3 days after the CBS show, the FAA came back with a 15-page write-up of why they believe that everything they put on the show was BS, and that Allegiant is a great airline, and that anything that has happened with them we've dealt with, and we don't see any abnormalities and that kind of thing. So it's hard to really see who's covering stuff up, if anything, and
it really goes down to, I mean, like you could break it down per incident. But I mean, you could also break down incident per flight hour and things like that, statistically into safety and all that. But just knowing what I know about their past incidents that were highlighted in this investigation, every single airline's had the exact same problem with one flight or another. I mean, it's not new. It happens. The only problem that this happens is they are a not well-known airline, and they are known to be a budget airline. And if you're only going to charge $67 from Rockford to Cancun, or Rockford to Sanford, Florida, or wherever they go in Florida now, you're gonna raise some eyebrows because, well, how come when you go and fly on United from Chicago to Orlando, it's $300, but you're Rockford to Orlando and you're only charging $69? Where are they cutting the cost at? And I think this investigation was really pointing to the point where they're cutting the cost to the maintenance side of things.
Yeah, I can agree to that. There may be some cost cutting there, and and that could be attributing to why they have potentially more emergency landings or more maintenance issues en route, that kind of deal. The money's that brings up a good point with that. So the other thing with that is where was I going with this? Completely lost my train of thought. CRS syndrome. But yeah, it's definitely eye-opening to see some of this data that they put out. I put the article out there. They broke it down and with some stats and so forth.
But we'll ask this question of you. If you had to get somewhere, and we'll tie this in the jump scene, and you had a jump seat, and you could get to where you wanted to go on Allegiant 4 hours sooner than flying on your airline or any other airline, would you jump on Allegiant and go?
I would choose my own airline first, probably another airline second. But if it was my last resort, yeah, I'd get on there. I mean, they're all signed off by the FAA. And the other fact is, I mean, look, aside from what happened a couple of weeks ago with another airline, Southwest, there has not been a fatality at all in how many years? 6-7 years. There hasn't been a major accident of any sort. All the airlines in the United States are safe airlines to fly. Some are, maybe you could argue, are safer than others, but at the end of the day, we're a safe country to fly,
Absolutely. And if I could go somewhere, and we'll talk about this, I got to go a couple of weeks ago. I went up to DC. I flew on Mesa, which is the black sheep of the regional airlines in the United States. And I flew on Mesa, and you know what I thought about? Oh, I'm getting there 3 hours quicker.
Yeah.
I didn't think about anything else like that. So,
yeah.
All right, you put in another story in here. United took a new delivery of a new aircraft type. Talk about it.
737-9 MAX. And United is getting, that's their first of, I believe, 10 that they're receiving over the next, through the end of 2018. And it's going to serve many different routes. Now, this aircraft is supposedly very fuel efficient, very green, and can carry more passengers than the other variants of the 737. Rumors around the street are that they want to use these 737s to do
transatlantic operations.
Yeah. That's one of the things that they may be doing eventually. But, they're testing them out on other routes. Houston, Austin, I think it's one of the routes. Houston, Seattle, Houston, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, that kind of thing first, and see how they all pan out. And then eventually, expand from there. So June 8th, I think, is when the first of those are going to fly.
Revenue service.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always exciting when you're there and you get a brand new airplane and things like that. Especially, I mean, and even still, when an airline gets a brand new airplane, like you said, like Greg just said, the first flight's not going to be until June because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that has to happen with the FAA before they can put that aircraft into service. I mean, at Acme, we just go. We bring a new airplane in and it goes into maintenance for 11 days. And I'm like, it's a brand new airplane. Why does it have to go to maintenance? Well, we have to bring it and do all the stuff that we didn't want to pay the manufacturer to do.
Right.
That we're going to do it ourselves. So with the first airplane, it's always 30 days for that first one because they have to make sure they're figuring out how to do it right. And then you go and you bring it down to a different entry and level service and things like that. I mean, it's just, you don't buy a turnkey airplane in the airline world because then you have to go and get the FAA the FAA authorizations, approvals, get them on your op specs and proving runs, and especially if it's a transatlantic or a transoceanic airplane, then you're doing polar runs and ETOPS proving runs and all
Yeah.
those sort of fun things with the aircraft. And
Yeah.
then
Go ahead.
then you have to take the airplane to all the stations where it's going to visit first to get all the people on the ground trained on the new airplane. So it's
Takes lots of time.
a big cluster.
And that's why it's being delivered now, and we have to wait till June.
Right.
Fly.
Yeah.
Or
I believe, yeah. And then, you know, at my airline, we do pilot training flights on new equipment and all that too. While the simulators are good enough, they're hoping to get the pilots some time in the real airplane before they put passengers in the back. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that's a little bit more than just, you know, oh, look, brand new airplane, throw them full of people, let's go.
Yep.
All righty. On the final note, I just want to mention this because this is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal to me. But the Federal Aviation Administration yesterday, on the 24th of April, issued Notice 8900.463. It's a new national policy for the use of a complex airplane during a commercial pilot or flight instructor practical test. Basically, what this is saying is you no longer need to have a complex airplane. A complex airplane is one of those being with flaps, a prop that moves, the total mind break. The variable pitch propeller. There we go. You don't need a variable pitch propeller. And the final thing to a complex airplane is the retractable landing gear. And you no longer need to have all of that in an aircraft for your CFI or your commercial pilot. And a lot of that, I really think it stems to Cirrus. Cirrus, the SR-20 and the SR-22 are a very, very, I would call them a complex airplane, not on their definition of complex, but you have to have a lot of knowledge in order to go and operate those aircraft and all of that. So there's a lot of systems involved in the Cirruses, but you couldn't use a Cirrus to do your commercial check ride in, but now you can. The only problem with Cirrus is they didn't have wheels that retracted. But other than that, in my opinion, you put me in a Cirrus right now, I'm going to need a good 3 or 4 hours with an instructor to figure out how to use the thing, because it's such a different airplane than what I'm flying now.
Interesting.
A little question back from the chat room from Mark. He's asking, every time a new aircraft comes in, do the dispatchers have to be retrained too? And yes. And even still, the 739 and the 739 MAX are different enough of airplanes where we need new training. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Jump Seat. That's in the FARs about being a qualified in dispatch qualifications. But yeah, dispatchers need new training on that as well with the new aircraft. So
yes, in fact, at least the carrier that I work for, you have to do a minimum 2-hour e-learning type thing where on the computer, and they go over the whole flight manual and the highlights of what's changed, what's different, and then usually a couple different type of scenarios, you know, what if type things and all that kind of thing that you have to go through for a new variant aircraft.
Yeah, we haven't gone e-learning yet. It's they're working on it, but yeah. So for us, it's still straight classroom. Anytime there's a new airplane coming in or a new different type of airplane, you go through differences training. So you bring in a new variant. So this would be a new type of 737. Well, it's obviously a lot different than your current 737s. So you go through differences training, stuff like that. And even still on my next our next recurrent class, we have the start of our initial training for our new aircraft, which we'll be receiving at Acme by the end of the year. We'll have a couple on property, and that's being the Bombardier C series. So I'm stoked about C-Series
Cool.
training
That'll be
because
fun.
it's a fun airplane to fly. I
Mhm.
tell you that. It's not too hard. So with that, we're going to wrap up the news, and we shall move on to the topic. So, Greg, we're friends on Facebook, and I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Last two instances, I mentioned on Twitter that I got to ride in the jump seat up in the front, and you had no seats out of Florida in the back of the airplanes. You got to have what I call the best seat in the house.
Absolutely.
Out of Fort Lauderdale back to where you live. So why do we get to do this stuff?
Because it's fun, because it's cool. Because we're privileged. Oh, wait, but there's also an FAR that says we can do it.
Oh, wait a second. The FAA says we have to.
Yes.
This is the reason why dispatchers get to ride on the jump seats of other airlines. And this is from the CFR 14 part 121.463A subpart 2. And link will be in the show notes to the whole FAR, but operating familiarization consisting of at least 5 hours. This is under dispatcher qualifications, by the way. Under this part from the flight deck or for airplanes without an observer seat, you have to sit where you can see and have a speaker and be connected to a headset. At least 5 hours annually. We have to sit in the front. I remember my initial training up at Acme Compass, and we had to do 5 hours in each aircraft. So we had to do 5 hours in the DC-9, 5 hours in the Airbus, 5 hours in the 757, and I'm pretty sure that's the three narrow bodies that we had at the time when I went through my initial. But we had to do 5 hours in each, which for me, I didn't have a problem with that. That was great.
Was this annually, or was this just for your?
That was for the initial,
initial.
And then annually you had to do just the 5 hours.
Okay.
What was it like up there at Acme Global?
So we just had to do 5 hours in any fleet type for our initial sign on as a dispatcher.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was pretty simple. Just hop on 5 hours and you're done. Then you get signed off. You had to do it before your first dispatch release.
Yep, which is the requirement of that one. Now, subpart C says that no certificate holder, basically any airline or person, can serve as a dispatcher unless within the preceding 12 calendar months, the dispatcher has satisfactorily completed operating you have to do a fan flight for another 5 hours every 12 months. My tongue's not working.
Yes.
Possibly the homebrew beer I'm drinking. But anyway. And then that can be reduced down to 2.5 hours based on the number of landings. So if you're a dispatcher working for like a regional that only has SABs and you only have a couple of you only have 30-minute flights from Minneapolis to Rylander, Chicago to Champaign, things like that. Every takeoff and landing you can subtract an hour down, but you need at least 2.5 hours of block time. Where have you gone before on your fam rides?
So on my initial, to start off, nowhere exciting. So initially I went to Boston, quick flight there and back. It's like 2.5 hours flight time there. Got challenging coming back because of, or was it the other way? Anyway, it came close to the 5, how you could do 4 hours, reduce it down to 4 hours with takeoff and landing. That block time going out was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then coming back was like 2 hours and 5 minutes. So I just kind of squeaked over the 4 hours. So that was my initial. Then I went to Vegas a couple of years ago because we can do a 2-day. So Vegas, stayed overnight, flew back. And then this year I just went to Hartford for my 3rd year route qual. But the exciting one is going to be this year because of my international qualification. So I'm thinking of doing somewhere either in England or Oktoberfest in Frankfurt later this year. You have a base month at the year that the company. So my base month that I have to do my route qualification in is September.
Perfect.
That's right in the middle of Oktoberfest for Frankfurt. So
or Munich.
We have to do minimum 5 hours in the cockpit going out to Frankfurt. Well, I'll definitely get that going out there. So yeah, that's where I'm hoping to go this year.
Yes, my my annual route qualification, and for those not watching on the video, I used huge air quotes around route qualification, has taken me to Japan, to Tokyo. That was my first one. That's where I got this awesome bottle opener from the Jet Lag Club, where it's literally just a push down, pull up, and the cap pops off. Greatest thing ever. London, Mumbai, India. I've done Dubai. And those are the big four. I haven't done which in my current position we call station visits. I haven't done one yet. And but man, they are I always loved the jump seats. I've always loved going and jump seating. You know, looking back on Twitter, I used the jump seat to get up to Dulles earlier, to be just before Easter, to spend time with family. I got into Dulles at 8 o'clock, opposed to getting into Dulles at 11:30. So it saved me a huge amount of time there because I was able to jump seat on another airline, which we'll talk about here in a second. But also, jump seating allowed me to go fly with my two buddies from the Airline Pilot Guy last week. They were on a trip together, and they were flying up to Columbus and laying over. That was right before I was going down to Sun and Fun, so I couldn't stay with them in Columbus for the night, which would have been great. So I just literally turned around and jumped on the airplane and came back, and it gave me the opportunity to sit there and hang out with, observe Captain Jeff flying in the airplane, observing Dana doing stuff. And then I was really grateful for Dana because we had so much ground time on their jet from their inbound to their outbound that he really took me through and the pre-flight of the MD-88 and really had me, showed me how to really program the FMS and how he takes the dispatch release and uses what information off of it and inputs it into the airplane. All of that was incredibly helpful for me. No one has ever taken the time to do that. It really takes it to the next, I'm going to call it nerd level. I mean, I went up to nerd level 10 in understanding what the pilots do with our releases.
Can I say, first of all, I'm extremely jealous that you got to do that with them because I've been wanting to, Captain Jeff, I keep emailing him and saying, hey, when can I do a jump seat ride with you sometime? And, his schedule and my schedule never seem to mesh, but yeah, that's really what the route qual is for. And in that case, yeah, you get to learn, when you hit the release button on your release, my question is, okay, now what does the pilot do with that information?
Exactly.
And by sitting with them, you're able to understand, oh, that's how you program the FMS. And oh, that's why this is important to put on the release. So that Dana was able to explain all that to you on an individual base and having all that time, that was really nice.
Yeah.
Usually when I fly and I do my route qualifications, it's usually me showing up in the cockpit right before departure, me sitting down. Okay, they're ready to push. They don't really have the time at that point. Okay, this is how I go to the FMS. It's kind of like, okay, you watch them, but you're not really getting the start to finish.
Right. Or even still, if you show up early, now you're a hindrance and in the way of their normal flow.
Right.
At Acme internationally, we always, most dispatchers, me being one of them, always took it upon ourselves to, like a week beforehand, email the crew, email the two captains beforehand, like a week before, and say, hey, this flight that you have coming up, I'm doing my annual route qualifications. I'll be sitting up there with you, especially internationally. They're not expecting another person being with them. So That was always a big help as well. Some questions to the from the chat room. James asks, what's your favorite aircraft to jump seat on?
Well, so I've only done the Airbus, the 37, and the 57. Those are the only ones I've actually done. I do kind of like the 57 just because there's 2 jump seats on the 57. There's one in the middle, and then there's one on the far left. And the far left, you're actually is high up. It's almost like a booster seat. And I'm a short guy, so that's short joke right there. But anyway, with the seat, you're actually able to be above the captain. You're behind him and sitting above him. So you actually get a good, like almost a bird's eye view of the flight deck, and you're able to get a better view outside. So that's kind of a neat airplane to do the rides on. The Airbus and the 37s are very tight. The 37, you got one jump seat and you're sitting right in the, like your legs are sitting right at the center console. So you're kind of boxed in a little bit. Not much room to move or put your, if you have any bags or whatever. But the good thing about the 37s, and because you're in the middle, you're able to kind of see on both sides when the captain, first officer, and exactly what they're inputting and into the FMCs and all that. So, but I do like the 57. I did not get to do the 47, unfortunately, before they retired, and I wish I would have done that. But the 87 and the 777 are on my bucket list. They're coming up, and hopefully when I do my international, I'll get one of those.
So my ultimate favorite was the 747-400. That aircraft has 3 jump seats on it. Generally, it's a crew of 4. So the 2 in the front, there's the 2 pilot seats, and immediately right behind are the two relief pilot seats for takeoff, and then there's a 5th in the back. And the crew that I was with was very gracious enough to allow me to sit in one of the ones in the front. And the captain that went and sat in the back seat, the 5th seat, and said, "Hey, if there's anything that happens, we're swapping seats right away." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine with me, but I can see from here and I can't see from back there." So that was good. So I love the jump seat ride on the Dash 400. It was an amazing experience, a lot of fun, and a really cool airplane. Now, domestically, I kind of like the Airbuses a little bit better. They're a little bit more roomier than the 737, than the 73s and the 88s-90s. The 90s kind of cramped. You're in the middle. It's just like a DC-9. The 90 actually has a horrible jump seat compared to the 88. In the 90, you're kind of like sitting on a kid's stool. You're kind of sitting low, and you're almost eye level with the pilots, which is kind of, I guess, kind of give you a better view. On the 88 on the 88, you're up a little bit with it. And then personally, absolutely positively, unlike you, the worst airplane that I've ever jump seated on was the 757. I can't stand it. We only have 1 jump seat on our airplanes. I think there's about 18 of them that have 2, but mainly it's 1. It's the one stuck up behind the captain, and you have to, if you want to see out the window, you got to be like this to see out the window and really, really. I mean, I guess if you're not a midget like Dispatcher Greg, I mean, it's great.
Exactly.
But for me, it's like, really? Can I see where we're going? And if you're not looking at the video, I'm literally have my head sideways to try to look out the window, and it's annoying. A lot of the times where I haven't been doing it as an observation ride, but I've been just kind of like when we were building this house coming down here to Atlanta, and I had to jump seat down. I literally would take the back of the jump seat off, rip it off. It's not ripped off, but it's Velcroed. Rip it off and put it to the side and sit sideways. And I'd just sit sideways, and I'd be listening to what's going on and kind of looking over my shoulder. But that was more comfortable. Or another thing is, I always feel like it's a bar stool, and I'm kind of missing a drink in my hand. Like I almost want to be sitting there. I'm gonna raise my chair up here a little bit. I almost want to be sitting like this. I'm like, yeah, seat on the back of the captain's chair, beer in my hand, and watching these dudes floss and fly throughout the sky. I mean,
see, I guess it has its advantages being short.
Yes, I guess it does, but I
Maybe
can't.
on that airplane.
I can't stand the 7.5. 7.6 is a good one. 7.6-400 is a good one. 777, the LR, what I took a jump seat on, is a great airplane. And I'll put a picture in the show notes, but I believe it is in, I think it's the cover or has been the cover before on Twitter or on some things, but it's best jump seat experience I've had, hands down. Most memorable was my trip to Dubai, where again, talked to the captains beforehand. They knew that I was going to be there. And then I was supposed to be flying with another captain, but he failed bidding. He didn't get the trip that I was supposed to be on, but he reached out to the other guy, the guy that took the trip from him. And so he was really cool. He helped me and my wife through in Dubai, and we had dinner that night when we got there and things like that. And he goes through and all of that. He looks to me like they're sitting in the briefing room beforehand because they brought me down to the briefing room to start with. So I started with this crew at the pre-flight briefing. And so down there, and the two captains were talking about, all right, which one do you want to do? You want to fly there or you want to fly back? What do you want? And then Jason, he turned to me and goes, what do you want to see? And I'm like, sorry to be this, but I kind of want to see the transoceanic stuff. I know domestically, but I don't know what you guys do over the pond. And I send you guys across the pond all the time. I've never seen a transatlantic crossing. He goes, okay, well, we'll take the relief period then. And so I was up there for takeoff, and then on the LR, the observer, the rest area is open for the pilots to sit in for takeoff. So he went up to both the captains agreed to go up to one of them go up to the rest area. So I got to sit in the cockpit for takeoff. Takeoff to top of climb. I was in the cockpit, 3.5 hours off, came out just before we coasted out of Gander and stayed there all the way through Shannon's airspace, and then went another 3.5 hours in the back resting and just relaxing until I came back up to the cockpit, the jump seat over Turkey. And the captain I was talking with, Jason, sits down, and he looks up and goes, oh, we have a friend. I'm like, what do you mean you have a friend? We have a friend. He goes like this, because I'm in the jump seat, I'm above. He goes like this, so I kind of bend down and look, and right in front of us, literally maybe a mile in front of us, 2,000 feet above us, is a BA 777 going to Muscat. And he sat there. We sat right underneath him the whole way, and I got some great pictures of that airplane going on the way down. But that was over Turkey. And it was just the coolest experience I could have had. No one in the back of the airplane even knew that airplane was there. And the BA pilots only saw us on the TCAS, but man, we had if we were a fighter, we could have taken them out with a missile, even guns. It was that close. It was that close. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, domestically, I don't have really any great or bad experiences because they're short flights, 2 hours, 3 hours. I have to say though, yesterday, the crew wasn't expecting me. I just kind of showed up at departure time and I said, hey captain, do you mind if I sit up here? I don't have any there's no seats in back. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, okay. He goes, well, I assume you know everything up here then, like, I don't have to brief you on anything, do you? And I'm like, well, it's been a while since I've sat on an Airbus, or was it 37? I said, it's been a while. He's like, okay, well, here's the oxygen mask. You know how to put it on, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. This is how you pull down the only thing I did feel embarrassed. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but so we pushed back out of Fort Lauderdale. We were like it was a quick taxi out to get to the runway. So we're taxiing out. And we're number one for takeoff. The first officer looks back at me and he looks at my seatbelt and he goes, you're not buckled in all the way, right? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, oh, I had my shoulder harnesses on, but there's a belt at the bottom.
Oh, you didn't
Latches in.
you didn't do the crotch strap.
I didn't do the latch into the. So he's like, okay, you need to buckle up because we're ready to go. And I was all crooked and I had to start unbuckling everything. He's like, okay, are you gonna be okay over there? I'm like, don't hold up. I'll have everything buckled by the time you start throttling up. So, so he was getting a little nervous.
No one buckles the crotch strap. I'm sorry. That's just, I kind of let that one slide sometimes. That's just me.
Yeah.
But I mean, normally maybe I would, but I mean, I'm a man of size. I'm not a little dude.
Yeah. Well, you probably figured.
Some of the jump sheet straps, I'm glad I can still get them around my chest because I don't know what size jump seat person they designed them for, but it's not this guy's size.
Yeah. So I got myself all buckled in, throttles up, we were up and all that, of course. And then we were just at top of climb. He goes, you know how to unbuckle everything? I go, yeah, I can unbuckle fine.
Yeah, I know how to unbuckle. It's kind of awkward because I got 5 things shooting out of this little harness in the middle. When I twist, they're all going to go bzzz.
Right. But the other thing that I kind of found interesting. So normally below 10,000 feet, sterile cockpit, right? You're not supposed to, only official
theoretically
business. Well, not on this flight. And again, every jump seat I've been in, it's been pretty formal. So we get off about 2,000 feet and up in the air, and they're just chatting about stuff and stuff that maybe you probably shouldn't be talking about below 10,000 feet. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know if I should respond, if I should not respond. I'm like, okay, we'll just keep going.
It's one of those things. As long as my voice isn't on the CVR, it's all good.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good experience. Again, they were showing me a couple things here and there and asking some questions and good topics about fuel and alternates and that kind of stuff. They learned from us too. That's another reason. It's not just us learning, it's the captains learning about what the dispatch role is. It amazes to me how many pilots don't understand what a dispatcher does or why we do what we do. So it's a two-way learning street. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked in the Rockwell as well.
Oh, no, I absolutely agree that it's a two-way learning street. And honestly, I feel that if I have to go sit and watch them work for 5 hours every year, that they should at least have to come and watch me work for 5 hours at least every 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's open. And if there's any commercial pilots, airline pilots listening to this, dispatchers are open to that communication. We welcome you coming into our house and our side of the operation to come and sit with us and come in, come to the ops center, especially if your training's co-located. Ask to talk to the dispatch senior on duty, the chief dispatcher on duty, and they'll hook you up with the right dispatcher to sit with, and you'll learn something. So it's a two-way street. Yes, we have to, by the regulations, come sit and watch you work, but you don't have to. But if you really want to understand our side of the world, come and sit with us for a little bit. It's fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, you'll understand the dynamics and you'll understand why your ACARS messages might not get answered right away and things like that, because you're operating one aircraft, we're operating up to 20. We got 20 going at a time.
We have, when captains go through initial captain upgrade training, they'll come around the office and they'll sit with us for, they do a tour of the whole NOC. They'll usually sit with an ATC person for, a half hour to learn what the role of the ATC people do and what the ops managers will do. And then they'll come sit with the dispatcher. Unfortunately, it's only for
10 minutes,
maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's
very
to explain
short.
what you do in 30 minutes is just impossible. I mean, I can't even get into the flight plan in 30 minutes. It's usually more about, okay, this is how we flight monitor. Okay, this is our, weather stuff. And this is our visual track. It's okay. And by the way, you've got 5 minutes left. This is how we flight plan a flight. Know what I mean?
This is what we're looking at.
Right. So I agree. I think that captains should come and sit with us, and I'm sure it's an expense on the company that they don't want to pay. Whereas ours is an FAR, we have to do it. Whereas captains, well, if we had to start scheduling pilots to come sit with us every 5 years, well, now you got to give them pay, you got to give them a hotel, you got to do this, that, and the other. They don't want to do that.
Nope.
So, and most captains aren't going to just take it upon themselves to say, hey, I'm going to go and sit with this dispatcher today on my own time. Probably not. So
some would, but not really.
Maybe some would, but you're not going to get. In fact, there was a captain I was talking to a couple months ago who's never even been to the NOC. He has no clue where the NOC was, what we do, who makes what decisions. He thought the dispatcher cancels a flight, or a captain or a dispatcher is the one who assigns the aircraft to the flight. No, we have nothing to do with that.
No.
And I invited him to the NOC. I said, hey, why don't you come check it out? He goes, oh, I don't have time in my schedule to do that. And I'm like, okay. So, but yeah.
Then you will continue to be in the dark, sir.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a learning process for everybody. But we have to do it per the FAR. And I'm glad that we have the authority. You think about it, the only people that are allowed in the cockpit are pilots and dispatchers. That's it.
In the FAA.
In the FAA, right. And, for years they've been trying. There was an incident a couple years ago that there was a dispatcher riding up in the cockpit. I forgot what airline. Maybe you'll remember this, but they landed at the wrong airport. And
was that
I forget what airline that was.
Was that Southwest?
Maybe
in Missouri.
They landed. Yes, it was in Missouri, and they landed at the wrong airport. And there was a dispatcher on board, and they tried, saying that the crew was distracted because there was a dispatcher in the cockpit. And ever since then, there was talks of trying to get the dispatcher out of the cockpit because that could pose, not security, but distraction and, that kind of thing. So, we got to prove our worth and make it so they never do get rid of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Authority.
I completely agree. Now, this last thing I want to talk about finally about dispatching is, Dispatcher Greg, can you jump on an Acme flight and come down and see me, and we can do this in person?
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, and I can get on an Acme Global flight and come up there and see you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it's great. It's what I love about the U.S. aviation industry. We compete against each other. We operationally don't like each other, but when push comes to shove, if I have an airplane broke in Chicago and United has the part to fix it, guess who I'm going to call? And guess who's going to borrow the part to me or rent the part to me, or I'm going to sell the part to them? United's going to give up the parts. There's an agreement between all the airlines that I'm going to say, I'm going to throw out a random percentage. 40% of our pilots don't live in their bases where they actually work at. They live elsewhere. And that's the same way with most airlines. And I've heard that FedEx, 80% of the pilots don't live in Memphis. Shocking. So they get there on other airlines. And we have an agreement with each other where we can jump seat on each other's metal. And there's jump seat agreements between all the different airlines. So a dispatcher like us can't jump every single airline out there. I mean, but generally speaking, you walk up to the gate and say, I'd like to jump seat, pilot jump seat, and you get in there and you go down the captain and say, hey, I'm a dispatcher for Acme, and I'd like to hitch a ride with you up to Dulles. And he goes, and you hand him all of your stuff, and he goes, okay, sounds good. You're going to be up here with us. You're going to be in the back. And, well, I think it's full. I might be here up with you guys, which would be my first time on an ERJ, so that'll be interesting. But I just got off a 12-hour midnight shift, so if there's if there's something available in the back, I'd really like to sit back there if that's okay with you. Yep, no problem with me. And that's it. I mean, that's how the whole conversation went with my trip to Dulles. I mean, it's things like that. It's a lot of fun. Have you done any other airline jump seating before?
No, I've not. Luckily haven't had to get anywhere that I had to go, and either I'm able to get a seat or that kind of thing. But no. Although, again, like I said, I'm trying to get on an MD-88 somehow, some way before those things get retired. So, trying to link up with Captain Jeff at some point and see when I can get on a bird with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, you're the bottom of the jump totem pole, and if there's no seats in the back, you can ride up front on other airlines and things like that. But I mean, it's generally speaking it's a pretty awesome experience. A great benefit. I mean, when I loved it when I was still I was dating my wife, but we weren't married yet, and I was still so tempted. Just instead of going home, it's when I was commuting when I was working for Pinnacle, when I would walk through the Memphis airport with a passport and an ID in my hand, I could literally go anywhere on any flight, just like a snap of a finger, just walk up and go. And that was including Amsterdam. Instead of going home, I would have loved to just go ahead and walked up and said, "Hey, I'd like to jump seats going to Amsterdam," paid the however many dollars in fees it was, and said bon voyage.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what I love about our industry.
It is. And even internationally, now I haven't gone international yet, jump seating, but you can, we can go on, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can go on foreign carriers that go to and from the United States. Like if you wanted to jump seat on Lufthansa from Heathrow to Newark or Dallas or back to the States somewhere, you could jump seat on those airlines as long as it's going to the mainline states. Is that correct? Or am I?
I'm not sure about. I'm pulling up our jump seat agreement. I mean, Acme's got a full list of, but I thought it was pretty much only domestic carriers, but you could travel internationally on them.
Yeah, I vaguely recall one of my coworkers doing that. I'm like, oh, well, that's a cool. You can go on a foreign carrier going to the U.S. or out of the U.S. But regardless, I mean, it's still.
Yeah, I mean,
on your own carrier, obviously you can.
Yeah, I remember when we were going to when I was going to Mumbai, there was a pilot for one of the regional airlines that wanted to jump seat Amsterdam to Mumbai, and there was a seat in the back, and well, the seat in the back just happened to be a business class seat, so he got a business class seat to Amsterdam Mumbai for, I think he had to pay like $100, which was the departure tax out of, and the arrival tax.
That's a good deal. Do you ask me?
Heck yeah, it's a good deal. It's great. I am not finding the.
Yeah, we can follow up with that later. I just thought it was a interesting.
Yeah, no, it is, and the only reason why I'm searching for a jump seat, OAL flowback pilot, and flight attendant. Maybe this one will do it for me. Yeah, this is all for the ACS people working it, not the actual list. Yeah, I mean, but there's a whole bunch of the whole list of carriers that we can jump seat and flow back on is big. It's a large amount of carriers that we can go ahead and jump seat on, and it's I don't remember us having anyone internationally that we can jump seat on, but I do know that it's pretty much, Acme has a group with pretty much every single domestic carrier that we can go ahead and jump seat on. which is cool. I mean, like you said,
yeah.
it opens travel to a whole new level.
Absolutely.
So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna search a little bit more. Greg, what's been going on in with you since the last time we had an episode?
Oh, what? It's been a couple weeks, right?
Thankfully, it's only been a couple of weeks opposed to a couple of months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was on a stretch of, I think 17 or 18 days in a row to try to get some time off in, I went to Florida this week, so I had to trade to get the time off to go to Florida. And then I'm also trying to take time off in the summer to take the family out on a summer vacation and maybe go to Oshkosh to go see the air show up there. So I've been doing some trades to manipulate all that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this past week I went to Florida. My nephew had his bar mitzvah out there, so we flew out was it Wednesday? We flew out to Orlando, spent 3 days out there. We went to the Kennedy Space Center out there, which was wonderful. If anyone's ever has not been there, I would highly recommend it. Totally cool seeing the Atlantis and doing the shuttle launch experience and all that cool stuff, especially if you're like aviation geek and NASA and shuttle stuff. So we did that. Second day, we just kind of laid around at the pool, did our thing there, and then we drove down to Fort Lauderdale, spent 4 days out there, saw my sister. We did a whole bunch of religious things over the weekend and hung out at the beach. It was sunny. It was 85 degrees every day. Wonderful. So flew back yesterday, and so I'm not scheduled to go back to work until tomorrow night. But as I was telling Mike earlier, I'm hoping my phone rings and I get some overtime tonight. It's getting kind of late though, so we'll see. And then I go into midnights. My May schedule, I'm pretty much the midnight whipping boy. 3.5 weeks of midnight shift. I can't tell you the last time I did more than 1 day on the midnight shift, let alone 3.5 weeks. So I'm gonna look like a zombie for most of the month. Yeah. But again, more trades. I think I have like 4 days off the entire month of May. No, 5 days off. Going into just so I can get the time off in July. So on paper right now in July, I'm off from like July, I think 14th through August 3rd, something like that, which is all of that are trades grouped together by scheduled days off. But what I just found out is that I'm what they call a relief dispatcher where I am at my work, and relief, they could change your days off. They could change your schedules a month in advance and then 7 days in advance. Well, I did all these trades around my scheduled days off. Well, I have a group of 5 days off in like July 22nd through the 28th. Well, I found out that they can move those days off that I have protected with trades to somewhere else in the month, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do that. So I have a feeling there's going to be like 3 or 4 more days I'm going to have to trade to try to get those days off. Otherwise, I'm going to be working like in the middle of my scheduled days off. So as far as Oshkosh, I'm hoping to go, but I'm going to have to wait until the scheduling people go in there and update my schedule, which probably won't be until June, and then try to find out how I'm going to trade 3 or 4 days off in the middle of July off.
That sucks that they can change your days off.
Oh yeah, 7 days in advance they can move your schedule.
Oh.
So if you have any weekends scheduled off, forget it, because they always move your weekends off. You know, you're always working weekends. My days off generally like Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So yeah, it's rough, but I'm gonna be like you, Mike. Eventually, isn't there a song? I want to be like you, Mike.
Like Mike. I just want to be like Mike.
I think I'm gonna be bidding permanent midnights coming up. Whenever the next pref bid is, which I hear is gonna be in the summer or early fall. So
you guys do things weird up there.
Yeah, we don't do the yearly thing. It's whenever somebody vacates a line is when we do what we call a shift preference.
To me, that just makes a senior person have a huge target on their back when they're walking through the parking lot.
Absolutely. I mean, if you hold a day line, if you're number, 50 in seniority and you have this perfect day line, you have that until you retire
You die.
or you die, or if somebody senior to you bumps you off that line, which all these people senior to you already have better shifts. So you're pretty much, yeah. So, but midnights is not a very desired shift in our office. So it seems like those lines always vacate somehow, some way.
Shocking.
Yeah. So I might be like Mike and have a midnight schedule at some point.
Yeah.
It's better than a relief because, hey, I know my schedule. They can't change my schedule. I'll get my 5 days off every other week. I'll have a 5-2-5-5 schedule. Perfect.
Yeah. So as Greg's been working his tail off the last month, Mike has not. I've gone to work for straight time pay once since March 31st.
Damn you.
I've used 3 days of vacation, and like Greg said, what a lot of great things about our work rules is I was able to swap, and people wanted days in the summer where I don't really do anything in the summer with the kids. Everyone else is off of school, so we kind of just lay low, and they got summer camps and all those other things going on. So I don't need to be off of those; they're away. So I like my vacation in the spring and in the fall. And so some things that's been going on with Dispatcher Mike in the last month is, well, we're selling our house eventually. We're buying a new house. We're under contract to build a new house. And so we're moving to a not far, just a little bit area of town closer to where all of our stuff is. We're building a new house there with a little bit more room to raise teenagers in, and things like that. So that's gonna be good. But I mean, the Europeans do it all the time, taking a month off of work, and it is just completely relaxing to 3 weeks in. I texted my dad, who's retired, and said, yeah, I'm pretty ready for retirement now. I just need to find a way to get money.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just the whole thing, our work rules allow us to swap shifts with each other. We still keep our contracted amount of days that we have to work, but some people are more willing to work during the summer than others. And I'd rather work during the summer than work in spring and fall where I can take time off with the kids with less hassle and things like that. And, it's been busy. I mean, we're getting our house ready to sell. We've got new floors and things like that. We used our profit sharing check to kind of redo our house and get it finished and ready to sell. And then we're going to use the equity from our home that we just spent as a down payment on the new house. So all in all, everything's fat, dumb, and happy. The kids are good. Everyone's good. I don't go back, like we started our like we do at Acme a annual bid. April 1st through March 31st is where we bid a line of days and things like that. I still haven't worked my desk yet. That's April 1st. And I won't work it again until May 5th. So right away, I've taken a month of midnights away because another dispatcher needed time off. He wanted my midnights because he has to go up to his mom's memorial service in Buffalo, and he needed time off. So we swapped his day shift lines at the beginning of this week. Like, I'm going to work tomorrow morning, bright and early, but he swapped those off, and he took my mids, and then he's a union guy, and he ended up having contract negotiations, so he gave away those 3 midnight shifts to the overtime pool. which to me is funny. We both won.
Yeah, there you go. On another note, make sure you tell your contract negotiations guy to negotiate good.
And why is that, Dispatcher Greg? Why do you care about
Me too.
Oh, that's right. Because those guys up at Acme Continental have a Me Too agreement that you guys get whatever the Delta guys get.
That's right.
Good for you guys.
So keep negotiating. Get going.
Bravo. Like I say, the longer they go ahead and negotiate right now, the better, because I get a good retro paycheck.
That's right.
So, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No. I mean, it's just gonna be. It's getting sunny. It's getting warm out here, and it's gonna be busy the next couple weeks. So, no more snow.
Warm. I've sat down and watched a couple of Cubs games that were snowed out.
Yeah,
it's not getting warm, brother.
It's gonna get to like 70.
Oh, you need to change your latitude.
I know, a couple degrees further south.
Yeah, like 20.
Yeah, something like that. How about you? Anything coming up fun and exciting for you other than buying a house? And that's it, huh?
No, that's pretty much it. I have an idea for the next podcast, or like an unusual podcast. I got a new headset down at Sun and Fun, and if you're watching the video, I'm wearing my Sun and Fun volunteer t-shirt. But I got a new headset down there at Sun and Fun where I can record the intercom and the radios and all that to my phone. So I have an idea for a podcast, unless Greg flies down and goes flying with me, which he's more than welcome to do. We can talk about that off air. I want to do a podcast in the air and do it from pretty much engine start or just before engine start, pre-flight checklist to shutdown checklist, just to really show what flying general aviation is like in the United States. It might have a topic, it might not. It just might be me going flying, and it'd probably be a good video, or as Mariana says in the chat room, two friends going for $100 hamburger.
That's right.
Amen. There's six airport restaurants around the Atlanta metro area to go ahead and do that stuff at. It's an idea that I have, and I really want to try it out. I want to stick a GoPro out there out on the wing to record the flight, and then I'll match the video and the audio together and do a podcast that way.
I'd love to do that. We should figure out some dates so we could do that.
Come on down.
Let's do it.
Or even better yet, the airplane's going to somewhere in northern Midwest area near Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and Rockford and Poplar Grove in July. It's always fun to jump in an airplane and do a Chicago skyline tour at 2,500 feet along the lakeshore. That
would be awesome.
That is. We can go on a date. That's how I caught my wife. Maybe I can catch Dispatcher Greg.
We'll have a pro date.
All right. So with nothing else pretty much to add, you can find show notes for this episode. They'll be out in a couple of days, about a day, probably tomorrow. flyinglife.com/2018/34. Find me on Twitter and the podcast on Twitter at Flying Life. You can also find us on Facebook. Dispatcher Greg is more of the Facebook guy. I'm more of the Twitter guy. Facebook.com/FlyingLife for posts and updates on that. Greg, what about you online?
Well, I am starting to get better on Twitter. I mean, my 15-year-old son has been forcing me to start getting on Twitter and start showing me how to tweet more. So you'll start seeing a little bit more activity on there from me. But currently, I'm at WXFan1978, and I've been saying this for months, but I am going to change my Twitter handle at some point to be something less dorky.
Maybe like Dispatcher Greg.
Well, I don't know. Actually, I have a Twitter handle, DXDude, or it's DXDude78. I just haven't really done anything with it yet. So that might be the to be coming call sign. But for now, it's WXFan1978, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm Greg Dubin on Facebook. I do also have a Weather Geek page if you guys are interested in weather. You can find me on there at just find me on Facebook, and I'll tell you how to get there.
All right, you can email the show. If you have any questions about dispatchers, what we actually do, we're not really people that just hit the button and send a flight away. We really do keep an active outlook on all of our flights and everything that we do. So if you have any questions about that, we would love your feedback. We'd love to take your feedback and make it a show topic. You can email all those at contact@flyinglife.com. Opening and closing music is from bensound.com, and some bumper music was at purpleplanet.com. You can find the podcast on Stitcher Radio. And if you are a multimillionaire and you want to support the show with the web hosting and the Libsyn fees and all that, you find us on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon.
Or if you want to get me an ATR 2100.
Or if you want to donate money so Greg can buy a good microphone.
Just kidding. It's on order.
So with that, we're going to wrap up the show, and I'm going to come over here and hit this button. And until next time, we plan to keep this more regular. You guys have a good one. Yeehaw.
Yay. We did it.
Yay.
That was fun.
Yes, Mariana. Donate to Patreon so Dispatcher Mike can buy a new airplane.
There you go.
Absolutely correct. Bravo.
Or pray for me to go to flight lessons. No. Oh boy. Eventually. That's my gift to myself. When I'm done paying child support, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to pay for flying lessons. So
yeah. It's fucking great.
Yeah, that's the goal, man. I want to get out there and start flying.
Come down. We'll go get high together.
Let's do it. Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'll look at my May schedule. I am off for like 4 days and some point in May. If you're off too, we can do that thing we were talking about, the GoPro thing, and doing a
podcast. No. Here. Let me pull up my schedule.
I'm trying to see my May here. May.
I think I work 10, 12 days in May.
I hate
it. It's ridiculous. You know, it sucks. It honestly sucks about our job is trying to rationalize people that I actually do have a job.
I know.
And yes, it's not normal for people to have their own airplanes and not work.
Right? Because you're always home. What do you do? How do you survive? How do you pay your bills?
How do I have that day as overtime on the 10th? Apparently I have an overtime shift on the midnights on the 10th. I don't remember picking that up, but shoot, I'll take the money.
I'm off the 15th, 16th, the 17th. Yeah, 15th, 16th.
I'm off the morning of the 15th. So I'm off the morning of the 15th. So if you wanted to come down like the evening of the 15th, we can go flying on the 16th. And I will go back to work the night of the 17th.
Yeah, that might work because I don't go back till Friday the 18th in the morning. So 15th, fly out the evening, you said, of the 15th?
Yeah, the only thing I got going on the 15th is the first day of Ramadan, which I don't practice. And it's on the, when you put what is that? The U.S. holidays on the Apple, U.S. holidays is on the Apple calendar, right?
Yeah.
And it just happens to be first day of Ramadan's on there. Good for the Muslim brethren.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like which day was I looking at? I was looking at it somewhere, and one of the Jewish high holy days was on there. I'm like, oh, that's that week. I mean, being a religious Catholic like I am, I still like keeping in track of the Jewish holidays. The Jewish holidays match up mostly with most of the Catholic holidays.
Yeah, they do.
So, I'm not against knowing what's coming up. And besides, when we flew to the Middle East, knowing when Ramadan was important. Yeah, but I got nothing going on the 16th. John Michael has a orthodontist appointment on the 16th. Naomi can take it. That's at noon. We could work around that, and then there's nothing. So that works.
So I could fly out maybe even the morning, that Wednesday morning, early, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can even fly down early Wednesday morning. I come down and pick you up, and if you needed to, you can. I'm literally sitting in the guest bedroom, and it'll be clean by then. You can stay the night here.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. I can either fly out Tuesday night. We'll see how the flights look Wednesday, or I'll just check with the wife, make sure nothing's going on those days. I don't think so. It's not in the calendar. So
that's what I always say. Woman, put it in the calendar.
If something going on, put it on the calendar, because otherwise, And again, the 7-day notice, assuming my company doesn't go in there and start messing I don't think they will, but
that's BS. You guys need a better union.
Yeah, well,
no, you guys have some dumb work rules. I just want to say that.
Yeah, I'm not happy. I've gone to the union about these relief rules, and it's always the response, well, it's better than it was years ago.
Well, it's not what Delta's doing. I mean, Acme's doing. Dude, our relief people have fixed days off, and they are set in stone. That's
the way it should be, right? I mean, I admit there should be some flexibility for the company,
Oh yeah,
but
I'm working this day. I'm working May 15th. I know I'm working, but am I working afternoon, day, mid swing, something? Yeah. I don't care, but I know I'm working this day, so I can plan around it.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Alrighty.
So, all right, I'm gonna go eat dinner.
And my kids are outside playing.
Yeah, we'll talk about the 16th.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man.
All right, man.
Have a good night.
Hey, thanks everyone in the chat room.
Later.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.